guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a first impressions video for you. Now, this is the Curtis F3. This is not the main star of this video, but this does serve to introduce the knife that I actually want to talk about. If you've been around my channel for a while, you're familiar with the Curtis F3. It's one of my favorite knives in existence. I've had this for a few years now, and I absolutely love it. I had the medium before and enjoyed it quite a bit as well. And those are really, the F3 is the knife from Dave that gets the most attention. There's a large, medium, and small. And then there's the Curtis Nano, which, you'll see, I think Boker maybe has done a collaboration with Dave producing the Nano, something like that. So those are probably the models that are going to be most well known. And I think the F3 is going to be by far the most popular of those. And look, I'm by no I'm not going to hide for a moment that I am definitely a Dave Curtis fan. I really, really like Curtis knives. Again, this is one of my favorite knives of all time. I absolutely love this thing. Now, having said that, I've got a knife to actually share with you today that is quite a departure from this. We'll leave this in for a second, and I'll probably use it a couple more times. What we have here is the Curtis Knives Cruze. It's considerably smaller, considerably slimmer. It almost puts me in mind of, a Curtis effort at a gentleman's folder. There are some things that sort of don't fit that overall theme of gentleman's folder, but overall, this is a slimmer, smaller, slightly more carryable Curtis knife. It's still smaller and lighter even than the medium, while being a little bit longer. Okay, so compared to the large, it's going to be substantially smaller. Okay, but compared to the medium, it's actually going to be a little bit bigger. So it sort of lands in between those two. And since we're looking at this, oh, by the way, I will say it does come with a typical Curtis pouch. In the pouch, we've got a card and a patch. All right, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that. Want to spend a little more time letting you guys check out this absolutely beautiful knife. Now, this is a Curtis knife, so this is a full custom rather than a mid-tech or production or something like that. But what I would call this, and I've used this term a couple of times before, I would call this a production custom. And what I mean by that is it's a maker, it's sort of like the Gareth Bull Shamwari or, the Peter Rizzenti, I don't know, Nirvana or Satori or Snafu or something like that, or a few others. We could name a bunch where a maker is well known for producing a certain model, does a whole bunch of that model. And so you essentially get to the point that it's like a production knife, okay? And what I mean by that is, you're not seeing a lot of variation in terms of fit and finish or how things are put together. He's making a bunch of parts and he's putting them together and grinding them all and doing sort of a repetitive series of tasks, okay? So when you buy one of these, it's almost a known quantity what you're dealing with. And in that sense, I actually kind of like what I call production customs more than maybe less production customs. Okay, when a maker is kind of freelancing a little more and kind of doing this, that, and the other. With a production custom, there's lots out there. You can watch some reviews. You can kind of get a sense for what you're dealing with and have some confidence when going into that, almost like you would, say, with buying a Spyderco. The only difference would be that every one of these is hand built, hand ground, and given individual attention by the maker, which actually is really, really nice and certainly elevates, okay, the level of quality because of that extra love and attention that each knife is given. Okay, so now that we've got kind of that out of the way, let's do a quick rundown on the size and weight and all that kind of stuff here. So if you're used to Curtis knives, this guy is like 6 ounces and around 9 inches long. This is not going to be that, okay? This is 8 1/16, so just a hair over 8 inches in length, 3.5 inches on the blade length overall. Now you can see there's a bit of a choil there, so you're going to end up with about 3.25 inches of cutting edge, 4 9/16 on the handle length, so not a huge handle here. Now, grip area is something I want to talk with you a little bit about as we're kind of working through this. So from here to here is about 3 1/8. Now, that doesn't account for the fact that a finger could easily sit back here. It doesn't account for the choil either. So if you add, you've got about a big 1/2 inch for the choil, and you've got another 3/4 of an inch or so back here. So there's actually quite a number of options. And if I kind of show you this in hand, you can see my hand does fit there just fine, but I can also choke up here and use the choil, but I could also back off a little bit and have my pinky fully resting on the back. So there's lots of options here, and it's going to work quite well, I think, for various hand sizes. Now that we've kind of gotten through that, it does weigh in at 3.475 ounces. It almost seems odd saying a number that low when describing a Curtis knife, but that's what the number is. Now, if this were titanium rather than carbon fiber, obviously that would be a little bit heavier, but this happens to be a carbon fiber variant. Now, I will say this at this point. I want to do a quick rundown of the features and stuff, but just keep in mind that the standard version of this with just plain hardware, plain titanium scales, I think starts at $650. We have on this model added carbon fiber and anodized the hardware, which is going to up that price. It's probably, brand new, this would run between $750 and $800. So I know that's a pretty steep price tag for many of you who are watching. And of course, this one happens to have a lanyard as well. That's obviously not original to the knife, but the previous owner put it on there, and I actually kind of like it. So at least for now, I'm going to leave the lanyard on. They've done a really nice job anodizing. I'll do a quick close-up of that before we're all said and done here. So let's take a close look at the rest of the knife. Beautiful, beautiful blade here. So M390 on this blade, very thick, heavy blade stock, aggressively hollow ground. So I will say, guys, I couldn't resist. I did a little bit of cutting with this yesterday, and as has often been pointed out by me and others, a really aggressive hollow grind cuts like crazy, and this one is no exception. And I just love a hollow grind because it allows you to have this big, thick, beefy stock that I just love a thick blade stock. I really do. It just inspires a lot of confidence in me. But by giving it that hollow grind, you end up looking at fingerprinting the thing all up like crazy. But by giving it that deep hollow grind, it still performs really, really well for cutting tasks. And I've got to say, guys, this blade is a joy. What a beautiful grind on this blade. I just love a nice satin grind, and this really, really has it. Let me wipe it off one more time so I can show it off a little better for you. There we go. Look at that. Oh, man, that's awesome. Beautifully ground blade. And of course, being a Curtis Custom, this is going to be a hand ground blade, and it is superb. Really, really, really like that. Nice and thin behind the edge. In fact, extremely thin behind the edge. Makes it cut very, very well. And with the way, again, this is ground, you've got a ton of material out here toward the tip. So very confidence-inspiring blade, very useful, very utilitarian blade, even though this is certainly a slimmer, lighter knife than we're definitely used to seeing from Curtis knives. Moving up here to the action, we've got a titanium frame lock. Typical Curtis pivot screw there, which I really, really like. Now you'll notice the pattern here on the pocket clip and on the giant pivot there. And Dave is a big fan of shooting and shooting sports, and so he's gone with a cross there from, a typical gun scope. So I kind of like that. Now look, I know if you're not part of the tactical crowd, that's going to put some people off, but honestly, if I gave this to just a random person on the street and said, hey, what do you think of this knife? I don't think they're immediately going to see this and go, oh, this knife's all about shooting. If you know that Dave Curtis is into shooting, then it makes sense. If you don't know, it's just an interesting design feature. And I actually like it quite a bit because I myself happen to be quite a fan of spending some quality time at the range. All right, so let's take a look at this pivot. Really, really like what Dave has done here, where the pivot being at this size serves as an over travel stop, and that's really, really cool. This is, of course, riding on bearings. You can see the stop pin, hold on, is an internal hidden stop pin, and it's done with the groove cut out in the blade. So I'm sure you've seen this before. So the stop pin stays here. As the blade opens, it hits on the bottom. As it closes, it stops on the other side. Okay, so there you go. That's how that is working. The action on this, or I mean the flipper tab on this is really, really nice. And this is something I commented on. I've commented before. I love that Dave kind of gives us a clue as to where to put our fingers, right? You've got some jimping, you got a little cutout there. So whether you want to light switch, whether you want to push this, it works really, really well. On this knife, he's kind of told you, okay, put your thumb finger right here. Look at where the jimping is. And when you do, you get this really nice deployment. I mean, I suppose you could push this out, but it's not really meant for that. This is a light switch type of flipper tab for sure. All right. Again, let's take a close up there and look at how attractive that pivot is. It is beautiful. Now this knife, you may notice a ding or scratch here or there. Nothing substantial, but I thought I saw some somewhere around here. Anyway, nothing substantial, but it has been carried and used, and that's completely fine. I think knives are tools and they should be used. Obviously a knife like this, I'm gonna baby a little bit more than say a Para 2 or cold steel something or whatever, but let's see. Oh yeah, there's a little bump, a ding right there. Anyway, so yeah, this has been bumped a little, but that's actually in some ways kind of a win because it makes you a little more comfortable carrying and using it. As we kind of move along here, we've got these beautifully blue anodized screws. Really nice carbon fiber here. No milling on the titanium, not needed at all. The one thing I will say about this is the lock bar tension is set pretty stinking high on this guy. So that it does, the blade will drop shut if I shake it, but I'm not gonna be able to do it on camera very well for you. There you go, you can see. Yeah, I can't do it. Anyway, the lock bar tension is pretty high, and so it does kind of slow, well, it doesn't do anything on deployment, but when you're closing the blade, we've got a pretty light blade here and a pretty high lock bar tension, so you may have to assist it a little bit. Now, off camera, I can just flip this shut and it works fine, but on camera, it's a little tougher to do. Single position pocket clip there. And, oh yeah, we didn't mention, there is, of course, a stainless steel lock bar insert on this knife. And now finally, let's get quickly to the lanyard here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but look at that. Very, very attractive. As I said, the previous owner put this on, and at least for now, I'm going to leave it for a week or two and see, what I think of it. I'm not really a big lanyard guy, but it seems to work okay on this particular knife. All right, so there you go, guys. That's my sort of quick rundown for you on the Curtis Knives Cruze. Obviously, this is a beautiful, beautiful knife. A little expensive, but I'm going to carry this guy around. I'm going to use it a little bit and kind of get familiar with it. And I will do a full review on this just because, man, it's so gorgeous. And it's a shame, I feel like I should just do a video every day for the next week featuring this knife just to show it off more because it is such a gorgeous piece. But I won't do that to you. I will carry this, I'll use it a little bit, and then I'll come back at you with a full review. If you want to see that, don't forget to like and subscribe. By the way, I've put a link down in the description box. If you're into knives of this caliber, DLT Trading is a pretty good option in terms of where you can find some nice stuff. And so you may want to check those guys out. Let's bring in the larger brother just as we kind of do a closing shot here. Look at those knives, such fantastic designs. No wonder I'm such a fan of Curtis knives. Anyway, some beautiful knives here. As I say, I will spend a little more time with the Cruze, get to know it a little bit, and come back with a full review, which, honestly, I anticipate to be fairly positive. There are a couple little things here that I want to talk about that may put some people off, or that I would like to see maybe done a little bit differently, but we'll save that stuff for the full review. Again, thanks for watching. Check out the links below. I've linked to Dave Curtis's webpage, website, and I've linked to DLT Trading. If you use that link, it does help the channel, whatever you buy. Okay, thanks a lot. We'll talk to you soon.